Well, you see, when we use the word sexuality, everybody thinks of a penis and a vagina, or a penis and an anus. Depends. But when I say sexuality, I don't think of this anymore. Once upon a time, because my mind was, when I attributed sexuality to gonads. When I speak about sexuality, I don't think of gonads anymore. When I speak about sexuality, I speak about power. So it's mastering power. And it's mastering natural power, nature's power. That's why it's associated to goddess. It's not penis, vagina. So there's this obsession. Men, women, people are obsessed with the gonads. They're like in, I don't want to quote Sigmund Freud, but they're still stuck in the anal phase. Like they're just obsessed. And so when we speak of sexuality, it's like, it's their organs, and it's pictures of porn, or pictures of their fantasies in their mind where they're making love on the beach, or whatever the fuck turns you on, right? When I speak of sexuality, I'm not thinking about that. It doesn't exclude that. It's just not that. It's sexual power. And I've said it before in videos. I suppose it will not be obvious for people to understand right away, but it'll resonate. It's like, my penis is the extension of myself. So when I speak of sexuality, it's like, or a phallus, I'm the phallus. I'm the obelisk. My whole body is connected to nature power. And my penis is the plug. So whether I plug it in or I don't plug it in, it doesn't really matter. If there's a reason to plug it in because I got to supercharge something, then be it, right? Give it like let's activate something. But otherwise, so again, what I'm trying to say is like, each time we speak of sexuality, your average person just obsessed with organs, a hole, I'm going to stuff my cock somewhere in some kind of hole, or in between a pair of tits, or whatever the hell, whatever it is. That's, I don't want to say it's wrong, it's not wrong, whatever works for you, but it's like, that's very limited. And myself, I had to go through a big deconditioning process because my mind was obsessed. And when we spoke about sexual mastery, although I had a deep instinctual, it's like go in that direction, is this. I had my own fantasies of what sexual mastery is. And it was always based on some kind of egotistical thing, meaning I'm going to be able to bang the most beautiful women and give them it's always the same. I'm going to give them 1 million orgasms and I will be declared the greatest lover that has ever existed. What is that? If it's not just lust, greed, ego, attachment, and ego. If I didn't say ego twice. Anger. It's always the same. But that's not sexual mastery as I've come to understand it. This is not sexual mastery. This is me trying to build a persona so I can have power and you be vanitized. So that's of course what I thought, because this is what my so-called ego wanted, because I felt sexually, I don't want to say impotent. I wasn't sexually impotent, but I wasn't in my mind the supreme master of the universe sexually like every man wants to be or pretends to be. So I knew I had a fear of it, but my realization of the fear was minimal compared to my fantasies. The realization of the fear was big enough to take me on a journey, a genuine, sincere journey to want to learn, but you have no experience, nor do you understand what you're about to learn. Right? When you go to, let's say you go into a new school, let's say you're going to go learn the flute. What do you know about the flute? You may have a genuine desire to learn the flute, and the rest is your fantasy. Then if you have a teacher, he sits down and starts to teach you the flute, very quickly you realize it's not what I thought. Right? And if I'm genuinely interested in the flute, I'm going to have to let go of my fantasies of what flute is and actually learn what the flute is. So the same went for me. It's like I have a genuine interest to discover what sexuality is, but it's mixed with my fetishes and fantasies. And of course, as you go, this is, right? I told you the story about wanting to learn the guitar. I'm not wanting to learn the guitar. I want to be like Slash from Guns N' Roses. Then when you realize you're not Slash, then that fades away and you start to learn the guitar. And then you discover the world that it is, and it's not Slash. Do you know what I mean? So the point is, as I embarked I had all these ideas in my mind, and I've had many teachers along that path. So most of them were women, and one of which would say, she would ask me, well, what do you want? And I would say what I want, and she says, why? Very genuine answer, very, very genuine question. And these were ex-prostitutes very often, which is another subject. And she would say, why? And I would come up with my big answer, because I want to conquer pussy. You see? And that's what she was trying to point at. Like, you want to conquer. And the desire to conquer comes from fear. Now, she didn't say that. She didn't say much, but she had enough experience, and she had seen enough cock to understand the cockiness of men. And she was very profound and understood enough that you're scared. And that's why you want to conquer. And you want to conquer women, and that by meaning becoming the supreme lover of existence, so that you can feel that you're on top of it. It was very subtle, right? I didn't understand that, because I thought that is sexual mastership. And I was very disappointed to realize that my fantasy of sexual mastership, well, I could have taken that direction, right? Because there's as many paths as whatever the fuck you want. So there's an option, you can learn how to do that. Well, you're not going to really learn how to do that, but you'll have the impression that you've learned how to do that, and you'll surround yourself with people who are looking for such a shallow kind of experience in which you may compete for the top position. Does this mean you've mastered sexuality? Not in the least bit. So there was an exit there. I didn't take it because that's not really what I want. I want to discover something deeper, which is, it's a surrendering to powers. And that's why it took me into the realm of the goddess, because, well, the goddess is nature. And everybody's scared of nature, because nature confronts you to death. Or at least that something is going to die. But you don't know who you are, so as far as you're concerned, that's you. And it'll eat you and swallow you, literally. And that in our world, we try to conquer nature at the top, at the surface. We've spoken about this multiple times, which gives us an impression that we are in control in the same way that we deal with sexuality. And that doesn't work for me, so that's why I let it go. But now you enter into the abyss of darkness, where you have to learn how to let go and allow yourself to, well, face yourself in a very vulnerable, honest way. I'm a drug addict to this, I'm dependent to that. I'm terrified of this, I'm terrified of that. It's technically death is everywhere, right? I'm obsessed with this, I'm obsessed with pussy. And then you don't totally understand what it is, and then you discover what you're obsessed with. A universe opens. Yeah, but you can't discover this if you're trying to conquer. You can't discover shit all if you're trying to conquer. You can't discover anything, you're too busy being a conqueror. So that had to be let go if I wanted to discover something else. That's the decision I made, because it's like, I don't know, like, I can't lie to myself at that level. Yeah. So anyways, by and by, as I started to go deeper into this and deeper into that, there was a remodeling of sexuality in my mind. Whatever I thought it was is definitely not this. And from that place, how I feel about it and how I look upon it also changes. And then you start to understand powers, the game of powers, how powers function in polarity through gender, and how these energies are used. You start to penetrate into the coding of creation, which you cannot do if you live at the surface, and which you cannot do if you're scared of nature and power. Everybody says they're not afraid of power. Everybody's terrified of power. You can see by how they behave. So yeah, it wasn't what I expected. Is it better? It's infinitely better. Did I achieve what I want to achieve? Yeah, of course, but not the way I imagined. Better. I couldn't have imagined this. If somebody would have told me, I couldn't have understood, because my mind was obsessed with the gonads and obsessed with pornographic, hip-hop-ish ideas of what sexuality is. Let's not let's even remove hip-hop, just how the world speaks of sexuality. Who speaks as what we're doing together right now? It's so rare. Yeah, but this is so basic. And when you sit amongst men, who speaks candidly like I had with my conversation with my buddy? Nobody. How many conversations have I had with men in my life? Nobody's ever spoken like that. Everybody's trying to act like they're in control, in charge, in a position of power. Once in a while you have one of those buddies that you kind of laugh at. Oh yeah, I just came in her face, man, I couldn't help myself. You kind of joke, but it never goes a little deeper. And we know how women are. They just bicker and blah, 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 and tell their stories. They never really speak from a genuine place, you know? So all this to say, sexuality is so much greater than what I ever thought it was. I'm glad and feel blessed that I was allowed to undertake such a journey. But first, there needs to be a sense of the greatness of that power. And second, that you realize that your mind is confused. And I'm not saying to pretend you're not confused, but to start to realize here, that means beneath the earth, I'm terrified of something, and my mind makes it into something. I'm going to fuck her and give her 6 orgasms, then flip her around and measure my capacity, right? So how do I go from I'm terrified to I could create a script of my performance? How does that work? Right? In your fantasy, it's like linear. But beneath your fantasy, if you allow yourself to be a little sensitive, you're like, this is not linear. This is an infinite ocean that comes from every direction and every angle. And the moment I do one thing, a billion other things happen, and I may get my fucking life caught in there. I'm scared fuckless, and you should be. It's not a game. And it's from that place that you start to realize why the ancients used to consider sexuality as sacred. People make sacred into new age yuppie shit, disgusting nonsense. I agree. No, it's sacred because it's powers, and when powers connect and meet, it binds you. That's why it's sacred. It's not a toy. But now you see how you used to live. You're like, oh, well, I use it like it was a toy. Careless, not even conscious that there are consequences. Yet you live the consequences internally, even externally, but you're totally clueless of what's happening to you because you're numb. So you start to understand the sacredness of it because you're technically playing with an atomic power. You and then she also has the other part of the atomic power. And this is not a game, right? So our homeboy in Russia is talking about atomic weapons. Everybody's scared. Yeah, because it's not a game. If that shit blows, shit blows. But who speaks of sexual energy or our sexual power in such a way? Nobody. Which shows to which extent people have no sense of what sexual energy is. Because if you did, immediately as you start to connect to it or realize what it is, you're like, whoa, this is not a game. That is a super atomic power. What I can create with this, it's incredible. And what I have been creating and how that sexual energy has been used over generations to create the very world we live in, and I have no idea what's going on. I'm absolutely clueless. And we've spoken about this in the first sessions or second or third sessions, and I gave the analogy of let's pretend that there's aliens and the alien race want to come here. I said let's pretend, and they wanted to make you work for them. How would they do that? Speaking of technically of sexual energy, well, with all due respect, who the fuck speaks like this? It's a very rare thing. And the fact that it's a rare thing shows me that there's a disconnect. Yet everybody's obsessed with sexuality. I think this is obvious. And everybody's trying as best as they can in the way they can to conquer it. Yeah, but that's what I'm trying to say. I give an example of some of the video goes like, well, you go to the ocean, you want to conquer it, then you want to be a surfer, then you wonder why a shark is there. Dude, this is the ocean. This is the mother of life on earth. This is the ocean. You don't fucking conquer the ocean. You're a little shit. If the ocean wants to destroy you, it'll destroy you. So there's no sacredness. You don't respect something greater than yourself. There's no humility, which is very often attributed to the so-called white man. I don't want to get into a race thing. I haven't got nothing against the white man or not the white man. I'm just saying it's generally attributed to that. It's that very superficial, shallow, intellectual mindset. I'm going to conquer Mount Everest. I'm going to conquer. I'm going to conquer. So I can prove to myself that I'm not afraid. And no matter how much the so-called man conquers, did the fear subside? Zero, it gets just worse. Because that man has conquered nothing. It's only an illusion. So sexuality for me is the greatest example of the powers that we are all trying to conquer out of fear. But to know it means slowly to face death. And this is the very thing that everybody runs away from.